Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brand Your Practice podcast, where we get to learn about branding and marketing and scaling your practice. I'm Brent Stutzman. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 ways to build a healthy culture in a group practice. And to help me do that is Vanessa Scaringi and Kathryn Garland. They are co-owners of Calm Counseling in Austin, Texas. Welcome to the show, Vanessa and Kathryn.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to be talking about the 3 ways to build a healthy culture in a group practice. But first, you mentioned in the show notes before, as we were talking a little bit too, is you guys are in a transition period where you are starting to see less clients and focusing more on the business. And I'm curious, as kind of a way of introducing yourselves, what was the tipping point for you guys to make that decision?
Yeah, I think we had sought some consulting with some other therapists, and I think we had been forewarned that was always going to be, if you grow, that's where you have to head. And we resisted it for a long time. But I think now we have 9 therapists that work for us, and part of the healthy culture is being able to meet with them and check in with them and have team meetings and things like that. And there are just so many hours in a day. The writing was on the wall that we had to start scaling back a little individually.
Yeah.
So what were you at before? And then, so Kathryn, maybe you can talk about where you guys were at before and what's kind of the goal? Because I know that's the hardest part, is actually getting your client load down to those levels that you want so you can focus on the business.
Absolutely. And I feel like I can tell on myself by saying that I am the more resistant of the two in terms of taking the steps to actually reduce caseload. And we're still sort of in the process of that. I think, just to piggyback off what Vanessa was saying, we found ourselves during the pandemic growing to such a great degree, and then sort of hit a point in which, much like with seeing clients, just got very used to doing a lot of the administrative and business pieces in addition to seeing a heavy client load, but then found that there were areas where we were really kind of neglecting things that needed to happen or feeling like things were piling up. And the smart thing to do, obviously, was to get help and to kind of redistribute where we were putting our energy. And I would say that probably over the last couple of months, we started to kind of not take new clients for sure. And folks who kind of moved to other places during the pandemic, we're transitioning them to providers who are, closer to where they ended up, and just trying to kind of lessen caseload through kind of natural attrition, and then being strategic about not seeing new clients. Got it.
And Vanessa, it's very unique for 2 people to come in and co-found a practice. So I'm curious, the yin yang, how do you actually divide, use your strengths and kind of divide up responsibilities? If you can just kind of give a brief overview for our listeners of how you've actually set that up.
Yeah, it's funny. We actually talk about our business like if we didn't have a partner, it would just crumble. I don't know how solo practitioners set up their own group practice. It just seems exhausting. Honestly, some of it just happens really naturally in terms of our strengths, like you were saying. And I think what we do is we try to have intentional sit downs and divide and conquer. Like, hey, I'm going to tackle these things. We try to communicate about that. And then some of it just happens naturally. I tend to be a little bit more interested in the marketing and maintaining some of that piece. And I think Kate's really good at addressing the business side, some of just the business side of things that have to be done. And so I'll tend to be out and about, and we'll come together and tag team. What did you do? What did I do? So sitting down, honestly, having just a weekly meeting, has been hard to set aside, but very crucial in being able to, make sure we're managing and keeping things afloat.
Yeah. That weekly meeting cadence is really important. I'm working with a couple of my partnership clients now. It's you've grown really fast, and sometimes you can be the victim of your own success. But one ways you can actually get healthy is having that weekly cadence. Like, you got to get everyone on the same page, like everybody from your intake coordinator to your clinicians to clinical directors, whatever it might be. They all have to be on the same. And that meeting or 1 or 2 meetings a week are really important. And it's interesting because that's just difficult for a lot of therapists because, one, they're busy, they're seeing clients, and that's never been part of the culture. So maybe as a segue into building a healthy culture, why don't you go ahead and jump into your first point, and, Kathryn or Vanessa, you can take it away, how to build a healthy culture.
I was thinking as you were talking, part of when Vanessa uses the word things organically happened, that really was what happened, is that Vanessa and I have a really good friendship in addition to business relationship, and that culture piece, and then sort of attracting people to work within COM that have kind of a shared mindset, therapeutic philosophy. Those were all things that really drew Vanessa and I toward each other. We kind of met. I was sharing office space, or I was renting office space from her, and we had worked at the same eating disorder center, not at the same period of time, and just immediately sort of had a shared perspective on that place and our feelings about how to treat clients. And that has just kind of grown into, having, 12 great people in this practice together. So that authenticity piece, I don't know that you can manufacture that. That there is kind of we joke about being sort of we're, married working relationship, where there's just where you just intuitively know, okay, well, I need to do this thing and you're really good at this thing. If there's a therapist that needs consultation, if Vanessa's with her kids and, not at the practice that day and I'm available, I'll jump on the phone with somebody or I'll talk to them. And then vice versa. If I'm kind of mired in household things and taking care of other responsibilities, she takes the load.
Well, that's really important. And you can't manufacture authenticity. I've been around people for a while, and even before I jumped into doing marketing, I was in pastoral ministry in the local church. So working with people, and you can always tell who are people who are comfortable in their own skin. You know what I mean? We all, we all wear masks in a way, right? But there's some people who have less masks or layers that you have to peel through. And I can tell you guys already have, you're very comfortable with each other, or even on the podcast and in our pre-roll talk, comfortable. And so but people long for that, right? People are attracted. Usually people who are comfortable in their own skin have done their own therapy work, who've actually done their own work of themselves. And people are absolutely attracted to that. Because I think people in a lot of ways are attracted to health. I want that in some way. But so you're right. You can't manufacture authenticity, but there's ways you can work on it. So I'm curious, if you want to add anything else to the authenticity piece.
Oh, well, I think hit the nail on the head for us is doing your own therapy work as therapists, having, being able to be self-aware, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing also being intentional about where you want the business to go, hiring people who are right for you and for your business at that time. I think, you can't really fabricate it, but working on it. I'm in, 4 kinds of therapy a week. I don't know at this point, but and I use all of those places to really suss out, what's right for the practice, for me, for my, work-life balance, in a genuine way. And I do think people are drawn to that. I think our clinicians, have often found us because they were, leaving agencies or wanting to be more authentic in how they're showing up for their family, or they're, just being able to be in the world and not feeling run down. So I do think people are, I think we attract people who are in a place, like that in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about, having a plan and where to go. I'm curious, how are you communicating those things as, you know, authenticity does come with like, this is who we are as a practice, and this is where we're going as a practice. So I'm curious, like, what conversations you're having around that and making sure your team's on the same page.
I think we're, you know, we try to be intentional about saying when we are in a mindset of like trying to figure it out, and being clear with our associate therapist when that's the case, or when we're curious about growing or trying different projects. They're really people who we look for their insight around those things. We're curious what their thoughts are. Would you say that's true, Vanessa?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we give them, you know, I think it's important that they like we're driving the ship or whatever the analogy is, and we know where we're going, so to speak, but we're also wanting to know if that feels right for them, and making sure that everyone feels like they're aware and on the same page. We talked about, I don't want to skip too far ahead, but that we treat everyone, how did we phrase it? Like they're, or we're in a beginner mindset, you know, that we're always seeking support and guidance, and that we don't have all the answers, and that we want this to feel like a collegial, collaborative workspace. Some of my background is working in an agency at a college counseling center, and I don't think I had any other experience that was as warm. It was kind of the stars aligned. It was the college counseling centers have shifted a little bit, but it felt so like I felt like I was important on the team. I felt like people really cared about what I said, and clinically, but also just in terms of the whole agency setup. So I think we also want our clinicians to feel that way, and that's genuine to who we are. I think we're both very collaborative individuals.
And as we've grown, we've needed to, we've come to some of our therapists who have been with us the longest and asked them, what would it be like if your role kind of shifted into something that was more of a team lead or had different responsibilities? Is that something you'd be interested in? In order for us to grow, we need to have that scaffolding. We need to have the whole team involved in that. So they've definitely been a part of our intentions with the business and what our plans are.
Yeah. And how are you? So this is a structural question then. So how are you guys structured right now? You guys are the co-founders, and then, what does your team look like?
Do you want? Well, we have a senior therapist role, and those are folks who are have been doing this really a long time, who are able to supervise and expressed an interest in that. So we hope that we can build on those skills and those desires. And we also have team leads, and those are folks who have been with us a really long time, know the culture of the practice, do a lot of our just onboarding with other clinicians. They do a lot of also the social kind of chair position of getting us together and collaborating and meeting in just kind of a fun way. Mm-hmm. So we have a team of 4 at that kind of echelon.
And then also it helps the therapists that are a bit younger than us help us with like social media things that we know very little about and are trying our hardest to figure out.
Yeah, I've given up on social media. Yeah. Like it's like we used to lean a lot into it, you know, and it's, I don't know. I feel like a lot of it's a dumpster fire these days, and I could spend a whole podcast venting on social media, but
yeah, it's true. We do see a lot of teens, and it's good to get good messaging out there to kind of combat some of the not so great messaging.
Right. Mm-hmm. As long as TikTok or Instagram will actually show your content to them.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
They may not want to show good content that's positive and upcoming because that's not
very
what they want to see.
That's not what gets them the numbers. Yeah,
that's right. Well, okay. So we talked a little bit about authenticity. I love the structure on that. I think that's a great way to kind of get everyone on the same page and provide some extra support, especially to the younger ones, and onboarding and building some culture that way with like making sure you guys are getting together outside of office hours, or at least everything's not always clinical. I'm wondering if, Vanessa, if you wanted to take us into the next point you guys were looking to discuss on 3 ways to build a healthy culture in a group practice.
Yeah, we, I think always having a beginner mindset is something that it coincides with authenticity, because I think it just is natural to who Kate and I are, and always wanting to make sure we're doing, some right by our therapists, doing what's best in terms of the work that we do, and making sure that everyone is aware that we don't have all the answers, and that we look to other, group practices, or we've sought business coaching, we've sought just consultation, and I think that also makes us approachable as bosses. I'm putting that in air quotes. I know we're on a podcast, but it is a hard role to step into, especially as therapists. We're so aware of power differentials and things like that, and we don't want to come across as like we rule with an iron fist at all. We want to make sure our clinicians know that we don't think we know everything, and that we're open to ideas. And we have, therapists who approach us with their own ideas and feel, I think, comfortable and safe doing so. And I think that makes people want to stick around. And in this world where relationships are so important, having a staff and a group of therapists who stay is so valuable and creates that culture. And so I think being approachable and knowing that they can come to us for anything is super useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think like being parents also makes it, as a therapist and as a business owner, your personal and professional life are hard to have strictly defined, especially during a pandemic where maybe you're, working and your kid is coming in and asking you for help with their math homework or whatever it is. That was always a part of us working so well together, was just supporting each other in early childhood, raising kids at that stage. And that just forces you also into a beginner's mindset, because obviously you're doing things for the first time, and your clinicians are seeing you kind of juggle and struggle and, do those things. And we generally hire people who are kind of in a similar position, who are trying to either juggle parenthood or new clinicians in the field who are in that beginner mindset of just, we're learning so much and we're needing a lot of support. And, as my kids are getting older, and they're really quick to tell me that I don't know everything and that I don't have it all figured out. And it's humbling, and it's important to always kind of stay in that mindset, because it's, that's true of all of us.
What's been the hardest thing about kind of instituting this beginner's mindset in your practice? Because I can imagine there's a lot of people in your practice have a lot of great ideas, but they're not always the right fit, for your practice. I'm curious, like I imagine that's probably a difficulty. Like, hey, I got this, all these ideas. And it's like, if you say yes to everything, then you become completely overwhelmed. But that's just one thing I have. I don't know if that's a similar problem you guys are having, or is there another kind of challenge you're experiencing as it relates to that beginner mindset in your practice?
Well, I think, sorry, Kate, I was thinking about being, I do group therapy. I facilitate a group, and, I think being able to allow space for any sense of disappointment or, we're therapists, so any feelings that might come up with the decisions that we're making or the path that we're taking, and planting the seed that they might want to go in a different direction, like all of that is welcomed. And we also, we are the ones that are running the business and ostensibly in charge, but I think we don't want anyone to feel like they're being shut down. So I think the way that we approach those conversations is with openness and, this idea that we have another idea, we have a different direction that we want to go in. And the idea of having a lot of these conversations, before we hire, I think is also useful too, is for them to know where we want to go and for us to know where they want to go. So that, not that we would avoid those kinds of things, but that we might have the idea of, oh, this person might not be the best fit for us if they want to do X, Y, or Z eventually.
Yeah. And I was just going to add to that, that is one of those moments where it's really helpful to be co-founders, co-owners, because we have to tell each other no about certain things. We're always having to compromise. There's no one expert mindset who is, condoning or condemning ideas that come about. So I think just that kind of the heart of our practice is joint. It is collaborative. It is having to make decisions together. So that's not something like we are turned down in certain ideas as much as anyone else would necessarily be. Obviously, we have the final say, but I think we're both very comfortable with telling each other no or saying, I don't know if that's right for right now, but we could do something, maybe down the line, or that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we move on, is there anything else you want to add to having that beginner mindset as being part of building a healthy culture?
We don't know. We don't have the answers.
Yeah, okay. We're just the beginners.
We're just beginners.
Well, okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to be hearing about that third way to build a healthy culture in a group practice. But first, this message. Okay, well, welcome back. So I've been talking to Vanessa and Kathryn from Calm Counseling in Austin. I love that name, by the way. That's a really great, bravo on the name. Calm Counseling in Austin, Texas. About 3 ways to build a healthy culture in a group practice. And now we're on the final point. So who would like to take away to jump in and share?
Oh, Vanessa, I think this one's you.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, investing in people. So we want to be a place where people want to work. And I think for a lot of our clinicians, they have worked at agencies where they haven't felt valued. And I think right off the bat, we want people to know that we value them. So our percentage split with our therapists is probably a bit higher than some other group practices in town. And we from the jump want people to know that we reimburse for trainings up to a certain point. Things like CEUs and consultation. We offer free consultation weekly. And we have other capabilities within the practice for training experiences, but we want people to know that we invest in our own, CEUs that are high quality and conferences and therapy. And so we want people to feel like they have the space to do that. And we also, we're toying with the idea of doing some profit sharing down the road. But I think if people feel like they're valued on the team, that they show up authentically, they stick around. So it just helps maintain that culture.
And that's
okay. I got a bunch of questions on this. So, go ahead, Kathryn. Yeah.
I was just going to say that's such a premise that we work relationally, as we've said probably a few times. And that is a major component of our hiring and our employing people, is that we want them to stick around. We really like building relationships, long-term therapy work with our clients, and we really want that to be mirrored in how our practice runs.
Right, and that's absolutely true. And practice owners are having to pivot in the way they provide that value and be creative with the percentage splits and benefits and that type of thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I would love to sit with this for a little bit. Are you able to share, would you be willing to share, like, what is your percentage split, how you break that down? Because I know a lot of group practice owners would just love to know. We're always curious, we're always curious about these things.
Yeah. I think, I actually listened to the podcast that you had, that someone did the research, gathered all the stats, and, it was all over the place for different practices. Yeah. And that's true in Austin as well. So we start out at a 60-40 split. And so our therapists obviously get 60 and we get 40 and we go up from there. And so that depends on, different training experience that folks have and, also how long they've been with us. And, it's easy when someone comes to you and wants a raise, if they've been there long and they're dedicated to the work and they, they show up in a way they keep their clients for a really long time. So, we like being able to go up from there and we go up to 70.
Okay. And is there, so thank you for sharing that. Is there sort of like, hey, if you want to get to 70, well, let me ask, are you guys 1099s or W-2s?
W-2.
We're W-2s.
W-2s. Okay, great. And then, are you guys private pay, insurance based? What's your?
We're private pay. We, try to slide where we can and create some, accessibility there. Obviously, we can help people with super bills if they have insurance. But yes, primarily.
I always think you can be way more generous and if you're private pay than you are with insurance.
Yeah.
Because I talked to practitioners. I was like, well, I have a heart for people low income or want to be able to. I'm like, look, you're going to be able to do that a whole lot easier if you're private pay than if you're going to try to do insurance. And even with Medicaid and things like that. It's anyways, that's another thing. So that's great. So you have a couple really good things going for your W-2s. So you can actually control that culture more and ask people to be a part of meetings and, you can actually own that time and give more direction.
Yeah, that was a hard transition, but we did that right before the pandemic and we're so glad we did.
Yeah, that's the whole 1099 thing. I did a deep dive on it and I'm going to be doing I got to talk to another lawyer and get them on the podcast because it looks like the way we treat our contractors are a whole lot more like employees. And that can just be dangerous for the business and for the actual contractors too. So that's a good split. Case consultations. Have you guys dabbled into the benefits world a little bit? Are your clinicians asking for like health or a 401k or something like that?
So we do offer an IRA, a simple IRA. And we, that's one of those things where we've grown a lot in the last couple of years and we're thinking about, what would be valuable to people. And I think we have, would you say like half of the clinicians are participating in the IRA? Yeah.
Is it a 401k or is it an IRA?
It's an IRA.
Simple.
Yeah. Simple.
Oh, okay. So you just deposit money into their IRA then or something like that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We did a bunch of research, on the onset and, it's just more expensive to have the 401k. And
it's also a lot to manage and it's a lot.
Yeah. It's a little more to manage. And this is, no pun, it's just really simple. And there has to be a little bit of longevity with us before, being able to participate in that because we match at the end of the year.
Yeah. Is that 6 months or a year employment or?
I think it's about it. It's varied. I think we were always changing. Initially it was just like, if you want to do it, let's do it. And then we've had some new hires. And so, if you've been with us probably about a year, then that's something that, we'd love for people to participate in.
Yeah. That's really important. What have you been thinking about profit sharing? Like thinking through that, because that's a really interesting concept too.
Yeah, it is above our pay grade. We had to outsource for this. We initially spoke to another practice who gave us the idea and we were like, that sounds like such a cool way to, not just at the end of the year, give someone a bonus, but like throughout the year, be able to reward, hey, we can tell that this is how much you're bringing into the business. And we would like to reward that on a quarterly basis. So we have a numbers person who's helping us crunch all of that. Cause again, not our forte.
Sure.
But we're hoping that we can roll that out for those senior level clinicians starting next year. And so, it would just mean that quarterly we, are able to pay out, reflective of how much they're bringing in, a little bit of extra cash.
Got it. Is that like a percentage of what they bring in, or if it's sort of like if they bring in over 13,000 a year or 13,000 a month or something like that, they get like a $500 bonus or something?
I think it would be a percentage. Yeah. But that's,
a percentage. Okay.
And, you know, just to like, not to be too touchy feely, but to bring it back to sort of the relational piece, the W-2 is about security for people, right? That like, I liked what you were saying about that it really does make them feel a sense of belonging, and that this is their, you know, if we've had a couple of clinicians who needed to buy homes, and it was really helpful in that process, in terms of getting approved by a lender. And then the profit sharing is about their value to us. Like we see their efforts, we see how hard they're working. And we want them to feel that growth along with the practice and feel invested as we are in them.
Yeah. One last question. Now I'm just curious. Are you, so you said it's a percentage split and not a salary, W-2 salary, right?
Right.
Okay. Have you guys ever thought about doing salaries?
We toy with it. I think it's so variable how much we bring in a given month, you know, based on we can predict it to some degree. And so it's really having the ability to predict that we won't be paying people beyond what we're bringing in has been incredibly useful. I could see, you know, shifting that one day if we've had more predictability and stability, which we're getting towards, but we've only been, we started in 2018, nice. And we started just with 2 clinicians. So, you know, as we grow, we're sort of learning, also what people value. And I think that, I could see people valuing that, but also, I think people enjoy being able to, well, for now I say this, it could shift, but, have flexibility in their schedule. You know, we have a lot of clinicians who enjoy being able to travel and, you know, maybe see clients while they're remotely, but maybe not, and maternity leave and things like that. And, I mean, I can imagine a world where they would really enjoy getting paid for some of that, but not having to restrict it is also really nice too.
Right. Right. And that's great that you're offering that much. I mean, it sounds like Calm Counseling would be a wonderful place to work. I'm curious, what kind of feedback do you hear from your clinicians as far as the culture, the benefits, I mean, the mindset, I mean, all those things? That's what would you say is kind of this reoccurring theme that comes out as you as you communicate with them or do reviews with them or whatever that might be? What are you hearing from them?
Well, a lot of them send their friends to work for us. So
that's a good sign.
That's huge.
That's huge. Yeah. I think, I had a supervisor a long time ago talk about the therapy work. You know, if you do good therapy work, then you always have an abundance of clients because the work can speak for itself. And I think the same is true in terms of the business. If you operate, you know, the golden rule in a way that you want to be treated, that people will enjoy working with you. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of our therapists come from their friends, like, hey, my friend from grad school is transitioning, and that's been really rewarding. It just helps build that culture.
Yeah.
And people,
go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. And then people who, you know, we're friendly with therapists who have worked for us and then they've gone out onto their own into private practice. And I feel like that's the biggest testament to if you're really doing things right, or if people are happy within your practice, is that you can stay friends and colleagues after they branch off and do their own thing. And we tell people, you know, early on, like even in the interview process, we want you to grow. We understand that you might not be here forever. And obviously we would love for that to happen. And a lot of times it does happen that people stick around for quite some time. But I think that that's part of the benefit of moving slowly as we do in our work as therapists, is that when we meet people, when we hire people, we take our time to kind of have a few kind of informal coffee, sit down, come to the office, let's get to know you. And it also, again, helps to have the two of us that we're both using our intuition on, is this person going to be a good fit? Are they going to be happy here? And I think that usually by the time we're having sit downs with folks who we've hired and kind of checking in with them, there's not really any surprises because we're pretty connected to them, and we had a good sense of it would work out well. So obviously, not a lot of complaints. I think that they would tell us if they did have issues that came up, because we are friendly and welcoming of all kinds of feedback.
Yeah. Well, the fact that they are referring friends to you to work for you is probably the biggest compliment, because as I work with lots of practice owners, hiring is definitely probably the biggest thing to do. The hardest thing is finding good talent to bring to hire is because a lot of therapists don't have their own kind of networks themselves, or professional networks in how to hire. So it sounds like without even asking, well, I don't know, maybe you do, but they are utilizing their own networks to be able to bring wonderful clinicians to come work at Calm, which is huge. So, that's really great.
Yeah, we're grateful for that, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. We have been, I would say, lucky, but it's also intentional,
Yeah. Well, that's the fruit of like the labor that you're putting into building culture, right? Like that, that's a huge benefit to you guys. Before we close out, I'm just curious if you could share what's sort of like the next big thing you guys are thinking about right now that you'd feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. Well, it's,
no jinxies.
I'm thinking about just what we were talking about with clinicians sticking around. We have now therapists in different parts of the country, and I think we're trying to build that piece of our practice a little bit more, build sort of more of a national, capability. I don't know, how that will, really pan out, but Kate and I are in the eating disorder world, and I'm a certified eating disorder specialist supervisor, which is a mouthful. But being able to connect with other clinicians that are doing this kind of work, and I think being able to have more of that nationally is sort of our goal.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, absolutely.
We have our
would you concur?
Yes, I do. I do concur. I think we're trying out a lot of new things right now, I would say, Vanessa, right? We're at field placement for Boston University this year, and that was we're kind of venturing into different, what does it feel like to have an intern work for our practice, and we've been talking about doing more business consulting ourselves. Like there are kind of things on the burner that we're cooking up slowly.
Exciting.
Slow cook.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I'm always curious what's on the minds of practice owners and their entrepreneurial spirit. So thanks for sharing that. Well, thanks for joining on the podcast today. I'm curious, where can listeners go and find out more about you guys?
Our website is www.keepcalmatx.com. And emailing us, Vanessa at keepcalmatx, or you're Kathryn at keepcalmatx. That would probably be the easiest.
Great. Well, all right, folks. Thank you for listening. If you found the conversation useful, please subscribe to the podcast and join me again for the next time on the Brand Your Practice podcast.